Welcome to another edition of the Empower Hour. I'm Alquamar.
And I'm Hanifa.
And we are your hosts each and every Wednesday from 2 to 3 p.m. right here on the eLife Media platform, coming to you with impactful topics of discussion that affect our everyday lives. This topic is going to be no different as topics previously. We have in the studio with us Miss Sheila Brown.
Thank you.
And you guys are going to be blown away by Sheila's story on how she went from how many pounds were you heavier?
I was about 3 pounds shy of 300 pounds.
Woo!
Wow.
3 pounds shy of 300 pounds to this beautiful bombshell that you see in front of you right now.
Took some work.
Yeah, it was a lot of work, definitely.
Miss Sheila, tell the audience just a little bit about yourself and who and how your story relates to the Empower Hour and what we do here today.
Great. Thank you so much for having me here, and it's a pleasure to be in the presence of your audience. First, my name is Sheila Brown, and I always introduce myself as the daughter or a daughter of the Most High. And I had to do that in order to stay balanced and to stay centered, because we live in a really stressful environment and a very hostile environment as Black women, as African women. And so I had to come to the conclusion that regardless of what was going on in my life, in my family, in my relationships, and in the community, I was going to stay centered around being a daughter of the Most High. But that came through lots of trials and lots of experiences, and it culminated for me in March of 2016. Well, really, it culminated in January of 2016. It was the day we had a big snowmageddon. My son and I were stuck at home, and it was his birthday, January 23rd. And I had, gone out of my way to make sure that no matter what happened that day, that on his 18th birthday, he was going to feel special. So I hid a cake in the closet, and I got him a laptop, and, he was really thoroughly surprised. And I remember when he cut the cake, and he offered a slice to me, and something in my spirit said, "But that's not for you." And I said, "Okay." And I told him, "I'm not going to have any." And he looked at me like, "Mom, you're not having cake?" And I just said, "No." And then, he goes on to enjoy his day. And I laid on my bed and I took a picture, like a selfie of myself. I was just kind of like holding it up. And I looked at the picture and I said, "Who is this woman? I don't recognize her. Who is she?" And I started to reflect on the state that I was in of my health. I was suffering tremendously from pain in my right shoulder, that I couldn't just shake it, and it would be so devastating and aggravating for me that at work sometimes I would try to sneak my shoulder out of the bra, and I broke out in sweats very easily, but it was manageable. I was still managing through, that pain. But it was also a lot going on with me socially. Like, I really didn't enjoy people. I didn't enjoy socializing. I didn't really want to go out. I kind of really...
And you could test that to your weight?
Yeah. The truth was, I just didn't want to get dressed. Nothing fit right. Everything was uncomfortable. And I had like this kind of come-to moment on my son's birthday. Now, the date is always significant to me because my life and my epiphanies in life kind of happen around key dates. And so my son turning 18 was a significant shift in my thinking and in my spiritual life as well. And so as I was sitting there reflecting on how did I get here, my phone rang. And it was a sister that I had known for years in DC. I used to have a bookstore and I would sell her popcorn. And her name is Dr. Dallas. And her name popped up on my phone, ironically. And I said, "This is incredible." I said, "Dallas, how are you?" And she said, "Sheila?" And I said, "Yeah, this is Sheila." And she said, "Oh, you know what? I called the wrong Sheila. I am so sorry." I said, No, you didn't, Dallas. You called the right Sheila. I need you." And so I set up an appointment to meet with her and do one of her consultations on health. And I got some really bad news. I was allergic to everything. I was extremely overweight, and I was in trouble. And, you know, even when I did Dr. Google, the symptoms that I was having was kind of like what you would see for someone who's having or on the verge of having a heart attack. So I had my wake-up call on that day, and I started to take some steps. But it was in March. I was at work, and I was watching all these, you know, food documentaries, and I came across one about a juice fast called Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead. And I watched it. I'll never forget, it was like March 19th when I came across the first one, and I was intrigued. I was like, is that easy to lose weight? And so I
was that the first time you attempting to lose weight?
I think so. I think so. It was the first time I really took it seriously. Like, I knew I had to do something, right? Of course, I had always been uncomfortable. I mean, what got me to that weight was largely when I was 18, ironically, 18, 19, when I got pregnant with my son, and my pregnancy was such a challenge for myself and my family. I ended up putting on 100 pounds.
Oh, wow.
And I went from like a very beautiful and athletic young girl to a woman who no one recognized. I mean, I would be on the bus looking at one of my high school classmates, and they would look right at me and they couldn't see
That's
me.
a big difference. Yeah, 100 pounds, yeah.
And so it was so stressful. And, you know, I just lost myself, and it just only deteriorated over the years with all of the stress that I had from trying to run businesses and trying to manage relationships and trying to figure out life and dealing with racism and all these other things that we deal with on a daily basis as Black women that counter our health and our health goals. And then we end up forming these habits to cope that we're not aware of. And I'll talk about some of those with you later because you and I have discussed them. But anyway, you know, back to March. So the next day I watched that second video, and I was like, I'm doing this tomorrow. And the funny thing was, I see how in retrospect the creator had actually set me up for that moment, because when I went to visit Dallas, she had talked to me about juicing. So I had already invested in a juicer, and I had already gotten on her program. She had this little book, and I was following all of her recommendations. So I was still eating a lot. I was still eating emotionally, is what I call it. But I was eating vegetables and fruit largely, and I had even gotten to the point where I had just cut out all meat. I just didn't want the meat at a certain point. I knew I had always been allergic to dairy, so that wasn't a big challenge for me. I couldn't eat dairy. But it was, when I think about, in reflection, the way the universe and the creator, the Most High, set me up, I saw a period of pre-fast. I saw the epiphany about fasting, like I can really do something to get this weight off of me. And so I did it, and I did a juice fast for 60 days. And at the end of that process, it was about the time of my son's high school graduation, so again, we have another key date. I lost 57 pounds.
In 2 months.
In 60 days.
Wow.
But what was also incredible about this was it took about 14 days for something mystical and magical to happen that I was not expecting. So, you know, I've always been a very spiritual person, but it was around that 2-week period where I really started to feel intuitively a spiritual presence with me, a divine presence, because you know something is divine versus undivine based off of what it advises you to do. You know, if it's instilling discipline, instilling good qualities, if it's instilling divine thoughts and positive action in you, it's usually the creator. We call it the first voice. And I started like really being given these revelations about myself. But before I get to that beautiful part of the story, I would be remiss to not tell you about this ugly start. So my first week of the juice fast, I was at work. It was a work week. It wasn't a big deal because I was scared I was going to get hungry, so I would carry like 10 big jugs of juice with me every day. And my coworkers was like, this lady is crazy. My coworkers played a really interesting role in the process too, but I carried so much juice with me because I was just terrified, because you're always eating. You just don't know what to expect. So I would carry these, I would be clinking down the hall, like click, 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 like all the glass would be shaking. But I realized I didn't need that much. So I was taking all this juice with me, but I was working a lot. So during the week, you know, it wasn't a really big deal. I was already occupied, so I didn't feel the challenge of it. But it wasn't until the weekend where I had to meet my enemy. And when I say that Saturday was the most difficult period I can remember in my adult life, it was unbelievably a fight with a demon. And the demon was myself, you know. And here's how it worked for me. So, you know, because I was a homebody and I'm naturally a homebody, I think I had to become an introvert because of my physical health, but I was definitely one at this point. And so, you know, my son was out, it was just me in the house as usual, and I got my movie and I had my popcorn and my M&Ms, some soda maybe, you know, and even some ice cream and a yogurt. Who knows? I was laid out. Usually what I would normally do is what I'm trying to say. Right. But on this particular day, everything was the same this Saturday night, except for my food wasn't there. So I'm in the covers and in the bed, and I turn on the video, and I guess at some point I just kind of instinctively reached for something, and the realization that there was nothing there, it just did something inside to me that broke me to the core. And when I realized, wait a minute, I'm gonna have to do this tonight without food, like no popcorn, no nothing. And I cried and I broke down, and it was just the most horrible experience. I mean, it was like a little exorcism I was going through by myself. Wow. I really broke down. I mean, I just couldn't understand why I was so upset and distraught. And it never occurred to me before that I was lonely. And I believe the secret to much of our problem as Black women, and it's a difficult reach, but I'm going to do my best to prove my point. I think a lot of our health disparities has something to do with an issue as subtle as loneliness. And I'll tell you how I came to that conclusion, and it took me a little while to figure that out, because in the midst of this, I'm just trying to get through the night. Now, the only thing that saved me was when I make a contract with myself, I'm going to stick to it. And I had made a contract with myself to do it, and I had the motivation. I saw what that man did in 60 days. He lost 90 pounds. I was like, oh, it's doable. The science is broken down. So I knew I was going to transform, but it was getting through that first weekend. I'm telling you, that was the hardest thing I had ever done in my adult life. Wow. But I somehow made it through that night, and it was a huge challenge. It was crying. It was, why am I so upset? What is wrong with me? You know, why am I so hungry now? And it wasn't even hunger. It was just, I can't even tell you what the movie was that night. But I do remember it was a very uncomfortable feeling, and it was a very lonely feeling. It was like no one I could talk to about it. Like, how do I even explain to someone I'm so upset, and what am I so upset about? But months into the process, I had come to the conclusion, and it took a couple of other similar experiences, even after I had mastered the part of controlling my eating. It took a couple of other emotional triggers to make me realize that when I was eating that popcorn, when I was consuming that yogurt, I was dating someone, because popcorn makes sound, and it clouds out noise in your own head that says only when you're quiet it's time for you to deal with these life issues that you had been suppressing. And I think when I was in that room and I couldn't hear all the noise and entertain myself with my man, which was my food, it was, you know, even when you think about foods that you like and what you eat at certain times, you'll pay attention closely to the kind of food you crave around a certain emotion. Like yogurt, it's a smooth texture, like it's a sweetness. It's almost like a kiss, you know. And popcorn, it was a conversation. It was crunchy, you know. And then you of course wash it all down, and it just pushes and makes room for you to do that all over again. And then of course chocolate, you know. The sugar makes it bad, but the chocolate gives you a little high. And so as long as I could talk to my man and touch my man and kiss my man, which was all of this snack around me, I was okay. But what happened that night was my man left me.
Say what? That's what I was going to ask. So it's almost like you, because I'm listening to you. I'm like, you sound like you were grieving a loss.
I was grieving a loss. I had to confront the fact that I was alone. And what was I? I was not alone. I was lonely. Now I'm alone, but I'm not lonely.
Yeah.
But then I was lonely, and to cope with the loneliness, and it was loneliness economically, it was loneliness spiritually, it was loneliness romantically, it was all kinds of lonely, and I know sisters can relate to this. I even adopted this mentality that I'm a cook, so that's why I eat, because I'm a cook. And all of my habits around dysfunctional eating, I justified it. Like, my ancestors loved cooking. You know, this is what my grandma did, my great-grandma did. And so I would justify my behavior. And even, I remember one time I was in a store and I was looking for a bra because my breasts were so huge. I couldn't just get a regular bra. I had to get like special bras, like special K bras, you know. And I was in this store I never heard of looking. I mean, I drove all the way out to Gaithersburg trying to find a bra that would fit me. And I came across the store because not even those special stores have the size that I need. And I went to the store and they said, oh, go over to that store over there. They deal with plus size women. And it was the first time I had gone into the store and felt empowered. But it was such an artificial empowerment. When I say that, when I went into the store, everything was, there was no 8, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 12, 14, 16. Everything was 1, 2, and 3. So if you were at 18, 20, you would have been a, you know, like a 0. If you were 22, 24,
so
you would have been a 1. And so here I am, you know, 24, 20, 22, 24, squeezing into it. And because it's stretchy, it's a real trick, right? It's like, it's a 22, 24, but it's stretchy. So you can really feel like, oh, I got this going on in it. And it looks like something, you know, your favorite celebrity might wear. But it's not, you know, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12. It's in a 22, 24, 26, 28. Wow. But it said 1. And here's what the thing was. I actually felt sorry for the women who had to do the 3. Wow. Isn't that something?
Wow.
It was such a psychological trick.
Right.
Right. And so how powerful and debilitating for a woman who knows she's unhealthy. To go into a store and be able to say, oh, but I'm just 1. I can fit into this 1. It was really, really strange. And I thought about it. I was like, this is not right. This is some psychological warfare. Right?
I have a question in reference to that then, because you have some people who are against where it's used as we're empowering women wherever they're at. Right? This whole movement of accepting, you know, and these a lot of times they're
your own skin.
Right, they're pushing. The women are unhealthy, you know, like at least to the physical, like you can look and see unhealthiness, okay? But it's like, so what? Be comfortable, celebrate, and I don't have an issue with that. But what you're talking about, it sounds very similar to that, to where you're encouraging people to stay unhealthy. Like you can tell people, build confidence where you're at, but you want to get to a healthy, you know, but this thing around celebrating unhealthiness, a lot of people push back on that. And it sounds exactly like what you just explained. That store was just trying to make...
They were monopolizing on your own
insecurities.
In other words, the same bikini that they make for a physically fit sister in a size 12, they will make that same bikini in a 26, 28. And so because you're already looking through, I think, faded lenses. Like, honestly, when I was looking at that picture that I showed you, that night when I put on that beautiful sari, I saw a completely different person in my mind. I didn't realize that I looked that big. And my son even said to me, Mom, I didn't know you were that big. Because they see you every day.
Do we have a picture of that?
And we embrace, I think naturally we feel entitled to have, you know, broad hips, large breasts, big buttocks, but
as black women,
we feel that way, and our men also kind of don't help with that. I can't tell you how many times I have had men who don't even know me that would notice my transition and would say, don't lose all that.
Yeah.
You know, you don't want to lose
that's
all
the
that.
thing.
I wanted to mention that
That's the
because
thing.
I was thinking we really do that too in our own culture, where we kind of make excuses for I'm big boned, or I'm thick. My whole family was thick, and so But and going back to,
and it's not just, and it's powerful because remember I told you about these revelations that I get. So one of the things that occurred to me was, besides just the men, it's also women. Like when I started combing through sisters, looking for sisters who were on a similar journey, whenever I would go on YouTube, I would see get a big butt, tighten that booty, make your buttocks. It was always something.
I love the focus,
every
yeah.
time sisters were focusing on health,
Yeah.
they
It's
would
the
they would
physical.
they would be
It's really
practically naked.
the lower part of the
and
body.
all they would focus on was get a tight butt.
Absolutely.
Maybe
I
a
agree
small
with you.
waist tight butt.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking, well, what kind of message does that send to our daughters, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, about a health? Because it has a lot to do with your question, which is, if you are making your physical health around the ability to attract a man, or getting into a dress for a wedding, or around something superficial, then you are not really positioning yourself to achieve a state of what I call divine health. You are likely to fail
Yeah.
because your motivation is something external. If you are, for example, on a mission to lose weight because there's a guy that you like and you know he has a certain phenotype, the moment that man does something to disappoint you, you have lost all your motivation in most cases to continue with your program.
Right.
And then you may even fall victim to, well, there's another man who likes me just the way I am. But you're not dealing with the fact that we got arteries, we got lungs, we got a heart to contend with, we got kidneys that need to be managed. And so the focus has to be internal. And for me, the journey started off with very much so, I got to get this weight off of me. I want to get good looking again. But it quickly evolved into something deeper. And that, I believe, happened when I did the meditation and when I did the fasting. And the meditation just came as a result of me not talking so much, not eating so much. You would be surprised how much time you occupy just preparing food, getting ready to eat food, eating the food, and cleaning up after the food, and then thinking about the next meal that you're going to eat. I mean, that was the kind of like my life at one point. But more too along the line of what you were saying about the media push. There is an agenda, I believe, to keep Black women in a state of unhealthiness. And it was only confirmed for me when I read Henrietta Washington's book, Medical Apartheid. I think that is a mandatory reading for anyone who loves a Black woman.
Very good book.
repeat the book.
Medical
Apartheid. And I can't remember the subtitle, but when you read that book as a Black woman, it will make you put it down. Because when a lot of sisters believe that it's okay to just, you've been diagnosed with diabetes. Your doctor says you need to cut it down a little bit. That's not true. You need to cut it out. You need to make a drastic change.
Good teaching.
But here's the problem. The medical industry is going to benefit whether you are healthy or whether you are on your deathbed. Because our bodies, if you read Medical Apartheid, is profit whether we're dead or alive.
Period.
And so when I read that book and as I was going through this journey, it really motivated me to stay focused on staying out of the hospital. And I know I'll catch some flack from that. But I'm not advising people to not manage their health with the medical system. I'm saying be very cautious to not put all of your trust in medical professionals.
Yeah,
And as I was explaining to people on my own health journey, I would encounter people and I would, tell them what I do. And sometimes I would run into medical professionals, and it was always alarming and disarming to me that whenever I would talk to a doctor or a nurse about how I lost 57 pounds, and by this point I had lost 135 pounds, and they would say, but you have to be careful. You shouldn't do that. Did you get a doctor's advice? And I'm like, wait a minute, where were you when I was expanding to the point of 300 pounds, and you would see me with chips, or you would see me overeating, or you'd see me stuffing myself, and no one ever said to me, hold on, are you getting medical advice on this? When I was drugging myself, no one intervened on my behalf. But the moment I took my life into my own hands and the results started to show, I was no longer qualified to manage my health and determine what to go in my mouth. In other words, if you are overeating, eating unhealthy foods, you are supporting a system that is going to be the beneficiaries of your failures or your success one way or the other, right?
Yeah.
But if you decide on your own as a black woman that I'm in control, that I'm not subject to, I am not submissive to a pack of Oreos, that I can see it right here and it's not going to faze me. That is the greatest threat to our enemy, which is, I believe, white supremacy. But, and I say that to say that we hear people talking about health disparities and health policies, and they'll do these wonderful efforts and plights to empower black women, and, you know, do these studies and things like that. And then I'll say, well, we don't know, you know, why black women are suffering so bad. But the majority of black women live either in urban cities or in rural environments. And the fast food industry is predominant in black communities and urban environments. In fact, there is a study that was done by the CDC that talked about the rate that black people eat fast food is so much higher as a percentage of people that we outdo white people, Asians, and Hispanics in terms of our consumption of fast food.
Wow.
And that's not a coincidence.
Right.
It was the Small Business Administration that decided that fast food establishments were going to reign supreme in poor urban communities. And they did it to the exclusion of other types of business, and then they subsidized those businesses.
Wow.
So think about the economic implications of that. You don't get a decent livable wage working in a fast food restaurant. There's only maybe one or two managers, and everyone else is going to be low-level employment. So you have the economic implications for that, right, which is poverty.
Right.
You have the poor quality food. You have the war on black men, which basically makes us alone, which makes us lonely, which makes us vulnerable. But then you had the infusion of crack cocaine, and it was a recipe for black women's disaster in health. And everyone says, well, we don't know why black women are suffering. I believe they know exactly why black women are in the condition that they are in, and I think it's only exasperated by the messages. I remember I was driving from Baltimore, and I saw this sign above my head. It was a big billboard, and it was a beautiful black woman, and she was just like she was happy. But above her head was the word MD Anderson weight loss surgery. I was driving down 16th Street. I was driving down 16th Street, and I kept seeing this advertisement for a bus, and it was this beautiful. Well, it was black women. They were all dressed in white and had these beautiful colors on their heads and lots of makeup and lots of hair. And I kept saying, well, it didn't say anything. Like, there were no words. Like, I was thinking, well, maybe this is a concert or gospel concert. It was kind of that look.
Yeah.
And I kept seeing this thing, and it would bother me. And one day I said, let me Google this when I get to work. And all I said was, I saw a symbol of a woman, and it said dominate. And when I looked up that dominate term, I was floored. It wasn't for everyone to know. It was about a drug that is targeted towards black women in urban areas, because it's not advertised everywhere. It's not advertised in the suburbs. And it's called prophylaxis. And the message was, in my words, we know that you don't have self-control and that you want to sleep with anything and everything moving. So we got a solution for it. Take our little white pill every single day for the rest of your life. Don't miss a day. And you won't allow HIV to take hold in you. Even if you contract it, it won't take hold in you. Unless, of course, you miss a day. I mean, it was incredible. And I'm sure I'm exaggerating on some point. But the messages were clear all around the board in all areas of health. And it was called Dominate Your Sex Life. how are you going to dominate your sex life if you can't dominate your own behavior? So it was this little aspect. And it wasn't even you dominating it. It was a pill. But it was the same message with the weight loss. In other words, we know you Black women are incapable of self-control and self-discipline and doing what you know is the best for your health. Don't worry about it. Deal with your life stresses the way you normally know how to, drugs, alcohol abuse, and there's no difference between someone who eats as a drug and someone who uses drugs. I had to learn it the hard way. There's no difference.
Addiction.
It's an addiction nonetheless. It's just some addictions and the outcomes are more acceptable socially than other ones are. In other words, it's okay to be fat, but when you walk around looking like someone, excuse me, I don't mean to be insensitive, but you look like a crackhead, that's socially unacceptable. But you can be the exact same thing in fat. It's unhealthy, it's an addiction, you're dying, right? So here was the messages that I kept seeing all around me, and it was like all of these revelations were coming to me, and the message was the same all around. If you're going to focus on health, it's got to be around sexuality, getting as big as you can. And so what's going to happen when women say, I ain't got time to do no juice fast, and I'm not going to spend 2 years doing weights? They're going to go for the fastest route. The message is that all you need is a big butt and a small waist. So the medical industry once again wins because you now go into the surgical room to get artificial buttocks, artificial things with no real understanding of the implications long term of that. Like most women don't realize that when you go get breast implants, you are committing to lifelong surgeries every 10 years. If you do that at 20 and you live to 80, you're potentially looking at 6 more very powerful surgeries. Yeah.
Wow.
Because they're not meant to last forever.
And not to mention that you never get the internal healing
Never
that you
address
need.
the cause.
So it's like you're walking around with this created body because you know that the medical doctor created for you, but internally you're still all jacked up.
That's like the show The Biggest Loser, when you know that show, kind of when it was like booming. One of the things I appreciated about it is that they would bring in like the psychologists and so forth, because I feel like weight gain is not as simple as just changing your diet. You know, I believe like in that holistic approach, you know, because there's some mental things oftentimes going on with that. It's almost like you're using food. Food is just your drug of choice at that point to suppress some things. So my thing is, okay, what is it that you're trying to suppress? What is it that you're trying not to feel?
Right.
Because when I was listening to you talk about it, like, that was my man. You know, I felt like I lost my man. And I'm just like, whatever those emotions were, you took that thing that you were using to avoid them, to ignore them away. And so now, and a juice fast is something serious. I've done a juice fast for 30 days. It's something serious. You really have to deal with your stuff. And all of a sudden now you're feeling. You're actually feeling. And it sounds like you had to sit in those emotions that night. Sounds like a dark night too, but you know, you have to kind of feel. Most of the time we don't even realize the stuff that we, like you said, the different foods that we choose at particular times, what they're doing for us and what they're suppressing in us. So like sugar, we already know that's a huge drug. And so most of the time we don't know that we're numbing ourselves though, until you take it away. And you're like, whoa. Actually, what is this? You can't even identify the emotion.
So we are in a really difficult situation because we really only have one option. And I believe that because of the political and economic environment that we live in, if Black women really want to get control of themselves, they have no option but to cut meat, dairy, and anything that is processed out of their diets.
Why do you think we fight so hard against that type of stuff, like what you just said, you know? And I think for the most part, most of us know, even if we fight against it, we know that what you're telling us is the right and proper thing for our lives, for our health. But we fight so hard against doing it. Why do you think that is?
I think part of it is physiological, and I think part of it is spiritual. And there's, I think when we say culture, I think those fit as subcategories within those two things. When I was a teenager, I came across a book by a man named Sheila Brown, and he talked about work is love made visible. And he talked about when you cook food begrudgingly, you can only feed half man's hunger. In other words, there's two sides to our hunger, and we experience it all the time. When we have someone like our grandmother who we go to her house and she's cooked your favorite meal, and you eat that food and you're like, oh my God, this is so good. And afterwards you feel energized, you feel loved, you just have this unexplainable feeling of warmth over you. That's when your grandmother has prepared a meal that feeds both sides of your hunger. And it's not just the food, it could have even been unhealthy food, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's the food and the love she infused in the food. Like your intentions in food preparation is very, very key in the process. But we can't talk about that, it sounds silly. But I know it for a fact, because when I was doing my juice fast, when I was switching, because my process was I turned my initial journey from just a 60-day juice fast into a 2-year gift of divine health. I was going to give myself a reasonable period of time to achieve a goal. And I wanted to get back to my favorite picture when I was in high school. And I actually did. That's what you see in the before and after picture. And if you look at that picture above my head, there's a picture of me in a pair of jeans when I was in like 16 years old. And it took me 15 months to do it. But the process that I went through was a 60-day juice fast. I switched to a vegan diet because I naturally lost all my desire for sugar, salt, and fat. I didn't claim it. It just happened. It was just a naturally occurring process, and I have never gone back. And then on the anniversary, because remember I say dates are important, and dates are very important whenever Black women are initiating or thinking about initiating a program. And I'm now working with sisters on that, and I developed a strategic health plan for them. And it takes, if you're not willing to commit to 2 years, then I can't really work with you, because it's a journey. That's why I call it a journey. And even now I'm constantly on a journey. Like I just did a 30-day challenge where I exercised for 1 hour every day for 30 days straight. Because why? It was my son's born day, my birthday, right? I call it my birthday because I gave birth. So I celebrate myself. But the way I celebrate, it's not with cupcakes and candy and wine. It's what am I going to do now? It's like my whole energy has shifted, because I see myself as a divine machine on loan from the Creator. I've been entrusted with the maintenance, usage, and effective, I guess, maintenance usage, I call it, and effective maintenance, whatever. I forget the other term I use, but it's my little way of thinking about it. But I think of my body as a machine and even a temple. But how can we treat our cars in a way that is better and more deserving than our own bodies? And our bodies were given to us. We were God's first creation. We are God's example, his idea of beauty and problem solving and the solution to loneliness. So it's only understandable and reasonable that we would suffer so badly physically when we are lonely, you know? But after that vegan switch, and I lost about another 30 pounds from that period, just that period alone. But then on the anniversary, I didn't expect to do it, but the spirit just said, we're going to do another 60-day juice fast. I was about 40 pounds away from my goal, which was to get to 165. I thought that's what I wanted my goal to be. And I sure enough did it. And I probably should have just done it for 1 month. But once I commit to that contract, I keep going. And I remember I was just melting away. I really wanted to stop, but the contract said you have to continue with it. But I did it, and I thought I had gotten past all of the emotional traumas that I had to deal with in life. But another issue came up on my second fast that really caught me off guard. And it was very difficult for me to confront, but I had to deal with it. It was something that happened in my childhood, and it involved my breast, and it involved my grandmother. And my grandmother was like a medicine woman in her own right, and she was always trying little remedies on me. And I was very angry about what happened, and it came up during that second juice fast. And again, you know, all of these subconscious things that stay with us, that govern us. I will suffice to say that I overcame that situation. I had to confront it. I had to confront my grandmother and say, I don't like what happened. I don't like what you, I know you had good intentions, but it worked out horribly for me. And I've suffered with it for 20 something years. But I had to make peace with her. I had to make peace with myself. And again, it's about accepting your body. You aren't always responsible for some of the damage that happens to you, but you are responsible for managing yourself. In other words, there may be some situations where I can imagine surgery would be a proper solution, but it should not be your first, second, or third choice. It should be the absolute last resort. But I'm afraid that, especially for young women, our babies are getting surgeries before they're even 19 years old. You know, and these are life-altering things. There was a young lady recently who did a really open and moving confession about how she was dying because she went and got butt implants. And, you know, again, it goes back to that message that your value is in your butt. And do you remember a time when a guy would look at his sister and it was like her whole package? It was like, ooh, she's beautiful. Like, she had an hourglass shape. It was never all about our butt until that song. I like big butts and I cannot lie. And I remember that. Nobody, I mean, we were always treasured, but when you think about it, and this is the power of media and song, because it literally, I hate to call it a culture, but it literally shifted the dialogue from everything that made a black woman special and unique to concentrating it all right here.
Wow.
And now your sum total of value to many black men is right there.
In 2018, 2019, you see that. Everything is like about the butt now to where...
And now they got white women trying to you know, get big butts.
And the danger to that is we already suffered from so much in our ma'afa, our great challenges in this country from slavery about beauty standards and our self-esteem and our self-hate as a people. So, you know, I remember I was in high school and there was a girl and she always combed her hair and she always had this blonde hair, and there was this beautiful brother. We all loved him. His name was Malik. And she said, Sheila, because I was, you know, Black Power back then. She's like, you gotta go talk to him. He was dating a white girl. And I said, but why would he go for a fake version of a white woman when everything that you do in your dressing, your appearance says that white women are the beauty standard? So if I were him, I would do it too. If all the sisters are trying to look like white women.
Us to swallow that right there. We don't want to touch it as black women, because it's like, no, I don't wear my hair like this because I hate myself. You know, I just like to switch it up. You know, no one says it.
And again, it's another manifestation of our physical abuse to ourselves and how we justify. Like, I hear sisters say all the time, "Oh, this is a protective hairstyle," and I'm like, well, when did that come into play? And it's like it was just like me saying I eat because I'm a cook. You know, and this is just what I do, but it's the same thing. Our hair is not meant to be protected. It is the protection, and in fact, it's the antenna to the creator. Like, that's electricity.
And not to mention, you'll put lye. You actually put a chemical that will burn you to the point of bleeding and scabbing on your skin to straighten your hair. But then you'll look across the ocean at an African sister who's bleaching her skin and call her insane, but don't connect the two.
We're all very sick. We're all very sick. And the moment we recognize it, we have to do something about it. And so instead of doing that, it's just we cope. We cope the way we know how, whether that's through entertainment and, you know, indulgence, but it's all noise. Whether for me it was food and having something crunchy going on in my life all the time, or if it was something else. But, you know, the key, I think, is when you recognize that you are precious, that you are God's gift to the world, literally, that we used to be, as women, the symbol of divine patience, of divine compassion. We were the caretakers of the earth, and now we go to everyone for answers about our own bodies.
How do we talking about relationship with food, I'm still on that analogy, sorry. How do you shift your relationship with food from one that is dysfunctional, for the most part probably toxic, to one that's healthy? Because it's not saying that you shouldn't have a relationship with food is evaluating that relationship. How does one make that shift into a more healthy relationship with food? Because we do need food to live. So what does that look like?
That's a great question. And I think the first thing that has to happen is you have to become conscious that we do have a relationship with food, and that food plays a role in our life, whether it's just to nourish and provide nutrition, or it's something more, right? And so I think for Black people in particular, food is such a special conversation because our ancestors had to do so much with so little. And I talk about that in my ebook about divinity soup, about my grandmother and collard greens and what she went through. But my grandmother would tell me all these stories about their youth growing up, and they took great pride in making people think that they even ate. She talked to me about when they were little and poor, and they didn't have much to eat, but they didn't want their neighbors to know that they were starving. So she said we would put grease on our mouth and go outside so people would think that we ate. But you know, food is a really, really interesting topic for our people. But this concept of soul food, I think we got it wrong. I think we misinterpreted the ingredients for what our ancestors did with the intent. In other words, if our enslaved ancestors had access to fresh fruit and vegetables and wonderful grains at their disposal, that would be our soul food, right? Like when we were on the continent. But because they were given the scraps, they still took that and turned it into the meal the best way they know how, and it was the infusion of their intention to provide the best they could that became what we know as soul food. But I think we have a responsibility today to use the best of what they had, the best techniques that they had, their intentions, and make something healthy for our families. And I did that for me. Like my grandmother made the best pot of collard greens with the best pot liquor you could ever taste. I mean, but my grandmother's process was so extensive. It took me 35 years before I would even touch a pack of collard greens. My grandmother, first she'd talk about, I'm gonna cook me some collard greens. And you knew within the next week or so you were going to get collard greens. It was never that day or the next day. So she would eventually get to the store and she would, you know, get her greens, and they would be dirty because back then you bought greens and they would be full of dirt and worms and gnats and stuff. And so she had a double sink, and she would fill it up with Tide powder and water. You know, I didn't know better. We just did what Grandma said. And so she would wash them. She would soak them for a day. And then she would rinse them, dunk them, rinse them, dunk them. And she'd do that for like almost another half a day. And it was like all this intentionality. I mean, I get caught up in the details, but it was really her intentions. Like it was a serious thing to cook. And the outcome had to be divine. And they were. So I finally mustered the courage, and it was really after another fast that I said, you know what, I'm going to honor my grandmother with greens. And so I bought the greens, I bought some mushrooms, I bought some liquid aminos and some onions and garlic, and I just went to work, and it's just like the spirit came over me, and I came up with this amazing soup, and I call it divinity soup. It's in honor of my grandmother, and it's an ancestor-inspired recipe, but it's a healthy way to have collard greens. It doesn't have ham, it doesn't have pork or beef, but it is the tastiest greens you'll ever have. I only second to my grandmother's collard greens. So what I'm saying is that we have to transform what we know was not our culture, but our circumstances, and distinguish that from the culture. Collard greens can be a very important part of our diets, but it does not have to include the unhealthy aspects of it.
What do you say? Good stuff. Thank you for that. What do you say to those who hear your story and think to themselves, "Oh, I just could never do that. Yeah, I just don't have the strength, the will to do
time.
The time, anything. You know, I can't. I just can't do that. Good for her, but for me, no, I can't do it."
I think I would say to those ladies, I felt the exact same way. In fact, I remember when Dallas was the first person, if I'm completely honest, to say to me, "Oh, just do a juice fast. We do it for 60 days. I even make the juices for people." I said, "I'm not doing that. That sounds crazy. That is stupid. Like, who would do that?" And I'm ashamed to say it today, but I understand when sisters say that because I said it. I said it. But I think it's a combination of a couple of things that has to happen. One, and paramount, is we've got to have a mission in life. We got to have a vision for our life. Like, I started seeing myself doing things, and I saw myself in another place, and I saw myself playing an active role in the world and in relationships to Black women and children in particular. And so when I looked at myself, it wasn't an unhealthy self, it was an active moving body. And I focused initially on that picture that I loved so much and that I really, really wanted to get back to. And I don't discourage women to have some vanity. You want to have a little vanity because it motivates you through those tough times. Like there were days where I'm just like, oh yeah, I remember that picture, that's right. So that was my motivation on tough times, and it would keep me going. But you got to have a mission, because if you don't have something that you're living for, a purpose, like why do I exist in the world, you don't need to have good health otherwise. But only if you want to accomplish something do you need to have a state of divine health, because we can't do very much without healthy bodies in the world, right? We can't even so much as go get groceries for ourselves, or run to the doctor's office, or run to pay the rent or anything. You have to have a healthy body. And, you know, speaking about how I believe the Creator was really working with me, I would never forget, I was getting my first bankruptcy client. I'm an attorney as well, and I really wanted to practice in D.C. I'm licensed in Texas. And I went through the D.C. bar, and I got a client. And every time I would get ready to meet with her, she would cancel on me. And I'm like, well, it doesn't make sense. Like, you wanted help. Why are you not, are you not showing up to your own thing? So she canceled me 2 times. I finally said, sister, just tell me what you need. What is it that you want? She's like, I can't get there. I can't get there. And I didn't really hear her. So one day we're at the bankruptcy court, and they said, oh, your client's here. And they said, go get her. And I'm like, why she can't just come in? So when I walk out there, I'm like, whoa. This sister, she was still a relatively young woman. She was maybe between 55 and 60. She was in a wheelchair, and her feet were up in the air like this, and her head was down on the ground. And she rolled up her wheelchair so that she could slowly start to shove. And I was taken aback. She was completely paralyzed from the waist down. She only had slight usage of her hand. And I thought to myself, without being judgmental, don't judge me, people, but I said, this is the extreme example of what happened when a sister just says, forget it. Y'all do what y'all want to do with me. I can't fight anymore. I can't do it anymore. Y'all win. You can't put me out my house. You can't take my money. I ain't got nothing. I can't even move. And I think that is where the enemy maximizes on his efforts against us. When Black women can't move, when we can't take an active role in our lives, when we can't heal, when we can't make a difference, I mean, it's the end of the world, because we have to be able to move. We have to be able to make quick, thoughtful actions, steps, and decisions just to get through life and get the people around us through life. And when we cut out, it's over. It's over. And I just said, my God, this is like, I can only imagine what she had been through to get to that place. But it was a long journey, and it culminated in, I don't care anymore. Not that she didn't care about anything. I'm saying, like, this is it. What can I do? What can you do to me? But we have to be, at this, especially in this day and time, we have to have our spiritual armor on. And to get back to your question, it has to be a selflessness. Like, I had a son who was 18 at the time, and he needed me more than ever at 18 than he needed me at 15, because of the things that he has to navigate in the world. He needs to have someone who's watching. I don't miss a beat with my son. You know what I'm saying? And I have intuitive guidance and things like that. But I have to be here and be present in order to do that. And I have to have sound mind, body, and spirit in order to do that. And I can't have that if I'm unhealthy. And I can't be healthy if I'm gorging, if I'm medicating, and if I'm doing things that are counter to my generations. Like, my mission is to do everything that I can so that the daughters to come and the sons to come will know I was here and that I love them so much that I put things in place. That's a part of my personal mission. And then I have a community mission, and then I have a family mission. So all of my missions say to me, you better have some self-control. Just like our Queen Mothers, Harriet Tubman, had to have self-control. She could have medicated as much as she wanted to if she could. She could have gone off, but imagine if Harriet Tubman wasn't physically capable of dealing with the darkness alone. You know, that was a woman who's a perfect example of alone but not lonely. You know, she traversed through woods alone in the dark. I don't even like to get out of my bed in the dark and walk through the hallway. I'm turning on lights.
And over and over and over again.
And over and over and over again. So the world is in trouble when Black women's health is in trouble. We have got to get control of our health, and we have to do it not just for ourselves, but for the people who are depending on us. You have to. You have no choice. You have to sit still so that you can hear. We don't have access to the information that we want because we don't control media. We don't control information. So we've got to have a knowing. We've got to have a spiritual inclination. I remember years ago hearing a story about a Queen Mother down in North Carolina who she was coming from an event, I think at church, and she got to her house, people were dropping her off, and she had the kids with her grandkids, and she just stood in front of the house, and she said, "We're not going in here tonight." And they were like, "Well, what's wrong, Nana?" She's like, "We're not going in there tonight. We can't go in there tonight." And that house burned down that night, but she wasn't there, and her kids weren't there because something was inside of her that knew, and I think we've lost so much of that.
I agree.
But it comes from a deep spiritual awareness.
Yes.
Like, we don't have control over science anymore. We don't have control over, and I don't know if we've ever really ever had that. We don't have control over the media and the economics and the politics. But one thing we do have is the ability to control ourselves. We have to do that. We have no choice. It is a lie if someone tells you, "Oh, you just need to cut down." It's a lie. You need to do drastic. You need to save your life, and the only motivation for doing that is that you have a life worth living.
Wow. Tell us about where we can find your book.
Okay, so my website is being worked on, but you can go to www.sheilabrownSpeaks.com, and you will find my free ebook called Divinity Soup, an Ancestor-Inspired Recipe. You can download that book by putting in your email address, and I will be sharing my upcoming book, which is a 21 vegan recipes. And these are things that I use on a daily basis. Like, I talk to women and coach women about, you have to, especially because of the economic challenges, you have to learn to use quality over quantity. And you kind of got to get used to not having as much variety. You don't have to have Chinese, Korean, Caribbean. You don't need all of that. And especially once you start cooking and once you clean your palate, which is why that initial fast is so critical. But when you actually start to, I mean, I will never forget the day I finished my juice fast. The first thing I ate was a slice of cucumber, and I tasted that cucumber. It was incredible. Like, I tasted every single molecule.
Yeah.
And I didn't need to have a whole bunch of seasoning and variety and sauces and variety. You know, it was just like, oh, this is what food tastes like. You know, and so that simplicity allows you to have a greater range of food choices, but you can do more organics and you can do more healthier food options. But I also talk about in my book, don't fall for the idea that you have to have organic. There was a study done recently that said if you soak your vegetables in baking soda and water, and I'm talking a minimum amount of baking soda, like 1 ounce to 100 ounces of water, you literally can get rid of 96 to 98% of all the pesticides on the surface and underneath the first layer of the skin.
Oh,
they did a study. They tested bleach, they tested baking soda, and they tested detergent on vegetables, and the study revealed that certain pesticides were almost completely removed with just baking soda. So that is hope for people who want to get healthy. And I talk about these in my book. So all my little strategies and things, but my real book, the one that I do the expose on my journey, is going to be called Journey to Divine Health, How I Lost 135 Pounds and Regained My Life in 15 Months.
Beautiful stuff. Repeat your book one more time and where they can get it.
Okay, so the book that's free online is called Divinity Soup, an Ancestor-Inspired Recipe, and you can go to www.sheilabrownSpeaks. That's SheilabrownSpeaks BROWN speaks.com.
All right, family. Well, that is our Empower Hour. We hope that you have learned some things today. I know I have. And we ask this week, as we do every week, if you heard anything within the program that resonated with you and you think other people should hear and should know as well, share the program, family. That is why we're here. We're here to get the word out to as many of us as humanly possible to assist in healing. Let's be the catalyst for change. Let's help each other. And until next week, we'll take care of each other, please. Peace.